The story of Eric Winkle Brown is the story of aviation at its most dangerous, its most experimental, and its most transformative, told through the life of a man who flew further into the unknown than any pilot before or since. Born in 1919 in the Scottish port city of Leith, Brown entered the world at a moment when powered flight was still a young and fragile science. Aircraft were made of wood, fabric, and wire, and survival depended as much on intuition as engineering. His father, a veteran of the Royal Flying Corps during the First World War, introduced him early to aviation, not as a romantic pursuit, but as a discipline governed by physics and consequence. From childhood, Brown absorbed the idea that flight was not about bravery alone, but about understanding machines and respecting their limits. As a teenager, Brown spent time in Germany during the 1930s, a period when that nation was quietly rebuilding its air power. There, he witnessed firsthand the intensity with which German engineers and pilots pursued aerodynamic performance. He saw aircraft pushed aggressively toward speed and climb records, and he watched a demonstration flight by famed German pilot Ernst Udet. That experience left Brown with an enduring awareness that aviation progress was accelerating rapidly, and that the next major conflict would be decided in the air as much as on the ground. When the Second World War broke out in 1939, Brown was already mentally prepared for the role aviation would play. Rather than joining the Royal Air Force, Brown entered the Royal Navy and trained with the Fleet Air Arm. Naval aviation demanded a unique blend of skills. Pilots had to master not only flight, but the precision of landing on moving ships, often in poor weather and limited visibility. Brown's small physical stature earned him the nickname Winkle, yet it proved advantageous in the tight cockpits of naval aircraft. More importantly, instructors quickly noticed his exceptional coordination, calm temperament, and analytical thinking. Where other pilots reacted instinctively, Brown observed, evaluated, and adapted. These traits would soon define his career. Early in the war, Brown flew operational missions, but fate intervened when his squadron suffered heavy losses. Several close friends and senior pilots were killed, a reality that left a permanent mark on him. Recognizing his technical aptitude, the Royal Navy reassigned Brown away from frontline combat and into flight testing. It was a decision that likely saved his life and reshaped aviation history. Test flying was among the most hazardous duties of the war. Pilots were asked to fly aircraft with unproven designs, incomplete data, and sometimes known flaws. Survival depended on judgment rather than firepower, and mistakes were rarely forgiven. Brown approached test flying not as an adventure, but as a scientific process. He believed that every aircraft, no matter how dangerous, could be understood if approached methodically. He developed disciplined routines, carefully expanding flight envelopes one step at a time, recording every anomaly, vibration, and control response. His reports were precise, unemotional, and trusted. As aircraft designs grew more complex and experimental, Brown's value to the Royal Navy increased. By the middle of the war, Brown was assigned to one of the most unusual and sensitive roles imaginable, flying captured enemy aircraft. These flights were undertaken not for curiosity or spectacle, but for survival. Allied pilots were encountering German fighters with alarming performance advantages, and intelligence gathered from the ground was insufficient. Someone had to fly these machines, understand them from the inside, and explain how to fight them. Brown became that pilot. Flying enemy aircraft was extraordinarily dangerous. The controls were unfamiliar, cockpit labels were in German, maintenance histories were uncertain, and even fuel systems differed from British designs. Brown flew these aircraft without the benefit of manuals or spare parts, often knowing that a single mechanical failure would be fatal. Yet he flew them anyway, believing that knowledge gained could save countless Allied lives. He tested the Messerschmitt Bf-109, noting its powerful climb but unforgiving landing characteristics. He flew the Focke-Wulf FW-190 and identified its remarkable roll rate and heavy firepower, insights that explained its battlefield success and suggested tactical countermeasures. Brown's most historically significant enemy flight came when he became the first Allied pilot to fly the Messerschmitt Me-262, the world's first operational jet fighter. At a time when jet propulsion was still poorly understood, this aircraft represented a glimpse into the future of warfare. Brown approached the flight with caution, gradually exploring its behavior at different speeds and altitudes. He recognized its overwhelming speed advantage, but also its weaknesses, including slow throttle response, fragile engines, and poor low-speed handling. His evaluation revealed that the jet was not an unstoppable weapon, but a machine constrained by early technology. This knowledge informed Allied strategy and prevented panic-driven responses to Germany's jet program. While Brown's work with captured aircraft was groundbreaking, his contributions to naval aviation were equally profound. Aircraft carriers during the war were evolving platforms, and deck landings remained among the most dangerous maneuvers in aviation. Brown became deeply involved in refining deck landing techniques, visual approach aids, and pilot training procedures. He conducted hundreds of deck landings under experimental conditions, often testing new concepts that carried personal risk. Through repetition and analysis, he helped transform carrier operations from a hazardous art into a disciplined science. One of the defining moments of Brown's career came during the testing of rocket-assisted takeoff systems and experimental landing aids. These technologies were designed to allow heavier aircraft to operate from shorter decks, expanding the operational range of naval aviation. Brown's calm evaluation under extreme conditions made him a trusted authority. When he reported a system as unsafe, it was withdrawn. When he endorsed a concept, it moved forward. His influence came not from rank or politics, but from credibility earned in the cockpit. The end of the war did not slow Brown's career. Instead, it marked the beginning of the most prolific test flying period in aviation history. As aircraft transitioned from piston engines to jets and from straight wings to swept designs, Brown was there to fly them. He tested fighters, bombers, helicopters, gliders, and experimental prototypes. By the end of his career, he had flown 487 different aircraft types, a world record that remains unmatched. Each flight expanded the collective understanding of flight behavior, structural limits, and pilot workload. Brown also played a central role in one of the most important innovations in naval aviation, the angled flight deck. Traditional straight decks left no margin for error. A failed landing often resulted in catastrophic collisions with parked aircraft. Brown strongly advocated for an angled flight deck concept, allowing pilots to abort landings safely. Though initially controversial, the concept proved revolutionary and adopted worldwide. Today, every modern aircraft carrier reflects this change, a silent testament to Brown's influence. Despite his extraordinary achievements, Brown remained personally modest. He never sought fame and rarely spoke of himself as exceptional. He believed that progress in aviation came at a human cost, and that every advancement carried the memory of those who did not survive. The deaths of fellow pilots weighed heavily on him throughout his life, reinforcing his belief that test flying demanded emotional discipline as much as technical skill. In later years, Brown became a respected aviation historian, author, and consultant. He documented aviation history with precision and honesty, avoiding exaggeration or heroisms. His writings emphasized lessons learned rather than personal achievement. He warned younger generations of pilots that technology could never replace judgment, and that automation, while valuable, introduced new forms of risk. Captain Eric Winkle Brown passed away in 2016 at the age of 97. His life spanned the entire arc of modern aviation, from fragile biplanes to supersonic jets. He was not the highest-scoring ace, nor the most decorated combat pilot, but his impact was deeper and more enduring. Through thousands of flights at the limits of human knowledge, he transformed danger into understanding, and understanding into safety. The world flies more safely today because Eric Brown was willing to fly first, to ask difficult questions in the air, and to write honest answers on the ground.
His legacy is not found in monuments or medals, but in procedures, designs, and doctrines that quietly protect lives every day. In the space between engineering ambition and human vulnerability, Captain Brown found purpose, and in doing so, became one of the most important aviators in history.